You're listening to the Grassroots Church podcast. We're a Jesus-centered community in Thunder Bay, Ontario. You can learn how to participate more by going to our website at grassroots.church.
My name is Amy, and one of the things that I really like about Grassroots is that we don't have an insular view of the role of church in the world. And one of the ways that we make sure that we are always being open in growing in different ways is that sometimes we bring in different organizations to speak to our community so we can learn about the good works that are being done by groups that we might not know very much about. So we've done this a few times this year. Jax came in with his, I don't know where Jax went, but came in with his biker friends one time and taught us about how they're supporting children who are in difficult situations. We've done this a few times other ways. Today, we have a special speaker coming in, and just before she comes up, I'm going to give you a little bit of a connection point that is actually probably more of a refresher for some of our youth than for some of our adults. So I was in charge of children's ministry here at church for some years, and I wrote a lot of the lessons. And one of our summer series was called Water in the Story of God. And youth, you might remember this organization when we talked about Hagar. Hagar was a female in the Bible, a character, who some believe came from royalty in Egypt and was given as a gift to Abraham. However she came into that family, she did so as a servant or a slave. So it was really challenging for her in many, many ways. And wherever she came from before, we know that she really struggled to adapt to her life as part of this new crew. And eventually she was cast out into the desert with her young son, Ishmael. And in that hostile environment, they soon faced death due to lack of water. So she was desperate. Hagar called out with Ishmael to God. And she said, basically, please help us. So we have a scripture part here we can put up. And God heard the voice of the boy, and the angel of God called to Hagar from heaven and said to her, "What troubles you, Hagar? Do not be afraid, for God has heard the voice of the boy where he is. Come, lift up the boy and hold him fast with your hand, for I will make a great nation of him." And then God opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water. She went and filled the skin with water and gave the boy a drink. That's from Genesis 21. So God heard her prayers. He blessed them both with a promise for the future and with water so that they could live to the future. This story is a powerful statement of the importance of women and the role that they play in many different parts of society all over the world, but perhaps most so in places where today they still struggle and they still sacrifice so much in search for water so that they can drink, live, and reach the promise of their future. So by providing that well, God has empowered Hagar and her son to build a great nation because water is life. So today, we are honored to hear from Lynda Gehrels. Lynda runs Lifewater Canada, and she can give more of the history of this organization. It is a local organization, but it is an international organization. So I've known Lynda since I was a wee one. She was friends with my parents, with her husband, Jim. And my mom was a very gracious person for people and met them where they were at, but she also had a very high standard for men. And my mom said that Jim was a good egg. So that's a stamp of approval. So I have enjoyed participating with some of the other people here in the annual Lifewater fundraising events that they would do, which COVID did put a damper on for a while, but we were happy to participate in again this year. And that's when Lynda and I reconnected and talked about how great it would be for this community to hear more about this community. So it's my honor today to invite Lynda up to share with us. And we're getting the hot off the press details because she's just returned from Africa and can tell us about their very recent work as they provide wells and bathrooms and health information for people who need it. So thank you, Lynda.
Thanks, Amy. That's quite the introduction. And yes, Jim was a good egg. He passed away in 2020. He had a heart attack, and died suddenly, which was incredibly devastating and unexpected. He was young. But in telling this story and in the presentation I'm going to provide today, I just was touched in the music and the words of many of the songs. This is a story of redemption. And you've played a part in that. But you gave a really generous gift in December. We'll talk about this a little later. And it's, too, is a story of redemption. And I just feel that sometimes you're put in situations and it's beyond your control. I mean, after all, this is not heaven, right? This is earth, and it's fallen. And, you know, we are the light, the hands, the feet of Jesus to be able to, you know, bring Christ into this fallen world. And he's faithful. I mean, in the course of the last 4 years, it'll be 4 years this July since Jim passed, I can attest to the faithfulness of God. I found myself being maybe fulfilled with my heart's desire always just to help. You know, I was a nurse all my career, and helping is just my thing. Giving and helping. It's always been my delight. And in this situation where I found myself at a grievous loss, that bottom line of who I was didn't falter, because I knew God was faithful. And I picked up running of Lifewater, even though I felt very ill-equipped. I had been with Lifewater for 20 years, but always kind of on the periphery. You know, my Jimmy G was a very adept and capable man, and he didn't always share. So I found myself kind of floundering a little bit, trying to pick up all the pieces. However, in God's faithfulness, he helped. When early, just to give a little bit of background, how Lifewater started in the early, mid-1990s, Jim was not even finished university, training to be a hydrogeologist, and was diagnosed with an eye disease that would render him blind in the future, unknown. It's kind of a degenerative disease, takes its time or not, depending. Basically, when he passed away, if you looked at that picture of those children, and on the right, you'd see a little tiny circle. He had about 4 degrees, probably less, when he passed. It did not stop him, and God was gracious. We were together, and we traveled the world. We worked in very, very hard developing nations, Haiti, Liberia, Kenya, Nigeria, to try and do what we could to ease the suffering that caused by unsafe water. And I helped him with that. It was a challenge, let me tell you. He prayed for faith. He prayed for healing. He asked God, like, take this affliction from me. He had a life goal, right? I mean, you know, work as a hydrogeologist, and then when he retired, he was going to do good for the world. Well, that kind of got sidetracked. God answered his prayers, not how he thought. He still had the eye disease. He had to stop driving 4 years after we were married, and walked with a cane, and you know, was a walking liability, let me tell you. There wasn't a crack in the sidewalk or a hole in the pavement or something that he wouldn't find. But we managed to keep him basically in one piece. But what he did get blessed with was the gift of peace. Peace that God had a plan, and his plan was good. And a gift of faith that no matter what affliction or challenges Jim met in his life, and I met, being married to him, that God's faith was there for us. That faith in him was strong, and we could trust him. I can't say enough how stabilizing it is to know God's gracious, and he's faithful, and he's merciful, and he loves us. Like, it is an anchor in times when things are just so overwhelming, it's hard to put one foot forward to the other, and yet he's faithful. It's a bottom line, and a really good one to anchor yourself to. I think probably, speaking of anchors, what really grounds us is a firm belief that, whether you live here in Canada or North America or whether you live in a developing nation, it shouldn't make a difference whether you live or die. Those factors, those natural factors, shouldn't be the determining factor of how you can live or not live. And it drives us. It fuels our passion. I'm only just a person. And Jim was just a person. We were just like you guys. Like we were, I don't look at us as anything special, but we had the determination and the passion and the belief that we could do something. And if we could do something, then there must be a way. When we found out that and saw with our eyes as we traveled overseas, this is what they drink. And they wash their clothes, the animals drink up the same water. There's very little sanitation in the places that we work in. They practice open defecation. So in particular, this is in Liberia, they have like 15 to 17 feet of rain. You have a whole bunch of, poo-poo in the bushes, and that rain washes it all down into the rivers. And that's their only source of water. You can imagine that it doesn't take much to get ill. A running stomach is what they call diarrhea, and that's a killer. Little ones, weak ones, people who are ill, the elderly, they all are lowered resistance, and they succumb to diarrhea without education to know that you should hydrate and keep hydrating, which is a bit of a problem because if you only have bad water to hydrate with, it just causes that cycle and produces devastating disease. The other ripple effect and things that we may not really know about, and Amy touched on it, is that women carry the burden of water gathering for their family. And that's not just water to drink, but water to wash your clothes, water to wash your, to bathe your children, to do your laundry, the whole works. All of that is hand carried from a water source, a dug well, a river, a shallow hole like that. And it's, you can see on that picture to the right, it starts young. That little girl is watching over her sister. It's an interesting, this is Gabbletown. My parents died within a year of each other, and we drilled a well in their honor in this particular community. I took pictures of these babies and went back a year later to see how it was going and what impact they had. And we had a little picture book, with some pictures that we take to give to them because they had never seen a white person. They'd never seen a picture before. And so these little ones were there in exactly the same clothes. And but they were there when we weren't sure. If you look at the stats, highly likely they would have passed because they wouldn't have had the water from the well. They would have been drinking out of a mud hole contaminated with feces. And they were alive and hale and certainly enjoyed the picture book. Pretty sweet, eh? Yeah. So, what can we do? Well, this is two young men from BC. They were the Mennonite boys, and they had a buddy in between high school and university. He went traveling to Africa. He was in a car accident and perished. At the day of the funeral, his mom went to make his bed, and under his pillow found his bucket list, of which was to provide water in an African community. So these boys, there were 5 of them, 6 of them, decided that they would help him fulfill this bucket list dream posthumously. And they did a marathon run from Osios to Richmond in BC and raised enough money for 12 village wells. And so, yeah, pretty cool. So they came into Liberia with me. My girlfriend and I were the team leaders for this group. Boy, the kid can eat, let me tell you. And we took them to see the wells and to drill a new well in their friend's honor. So they were just having some fun with the kids. The kids will remember this day for sure. And with their own eyes, they saw what kind of a difference that it was certainly effort to run those 80 kilometers, but they saw it was life-changing and life-saving, because the kids that they worked with and played with, they had the potential then to reach their and meet their future with health, and you know, who knows the ripple effect that could be. They can be leaders. They'll be, you know, change makers in their communities. We don't think we'll know until we get to heaven to see just what kind of influence the effort that those boys had, or for that matter, the effort and the impact that your gift has had. I mean, one of the things that Jim decided early on, because we worked with other NGOs in the very, very beginning, and their approach didn't sit too well with us. We just felt that where we wanted to go and how Lifewater Canada wanted to be was more empowering, less aid, more development. I mean, we're not in there for the short run. We determined after the first village that you can't ask people, you can train them, you can give them stuff, but you can't ask them to volunteer when they're living on $1 a day. If they don't work for that day to make that dollar, their families don't eat, their kids don't go to school, they don't have money for medicine, which is, all of that is pretty sparse on $1 US a day. And so it was very early on that we decided that we can't operate in that way. We need to provide for them. We need to give them the training. We need to give them the equipment. We need to not just have it happen when we white guys are in country. And if we wanted it to live and to multiply and to become rooted in their culture. And so this is our approach. 3 phases. You know, we train and equip. And so on the right, that's Hosea. He's our Nigerian driller and leader. Scott is there. This is in Kenya, and he's our one of our staff that helps with foundational grants and works with our companies. They are working on a new rig, and this is a portable rig. We ended up kind of spur of the moment. That's what happens when you're small. You can do things kind of outside of the box easily. We had our first international conference. So we brought drillers from Liberia, Nigeria, and we met in Kenya and trained there on the new rig that had just come in. So you can see in the red hard hat, this is Alice. She is one of our Kenya drillers. And if red means you're the boss, you are the manager of the rig. And so, you know, here's again some of the redemptive nature of what we do, is that we are not only empowering women by easing their burden of being water bearers, but we are also giving opportunity for these women to be able to step into what they can do. She's had university training in water issues and geological issues, but couldn't find any work. You know, it didn't take much to be able to show her and to train her, and now she's the lead driller. And let me tell you, she keeps a clean site. There are no tools lost on her watch, you know, and people are put to work, and there's no lollygagging. Like, everybody is doing their job, and she's got the, you know, community rallied to be able to give a helping hand. She's really good at it, and kind of puts the men a little bit to task, because they, you know, they get involved and they get scattered a little bit, and so she's, you know, she draws them in and making sure that everything is clean and tidy and ready for the next job. It's pretty sweet. The other good thing about that particular conference is that all those teams networked. They all got to know each other. And, you know, we've got a 5 to 6 hour time difference, and they got their bit stuck down the hole or something wrong with their rig or whatever. It's dial Canada and talk to Dan in the middle of the night to say, bro Dan, I can't get this done. And he has to, you know, kind of get his head into gear and give them advice and whatever. Now they can call their other national people and say, Hosea, who's just in Nigeria, almost the same time zone, I'm stuck, you know, what can you do? And he'll give opportunity to learn virtually, and, you know, we're getting a lot less, you know, disruptions in our sleep, and they're they're making really lovely relationships together, which is really part of that training and equipping and empowering. So it's pretty exciting. We're very pleased with that. Part of the equipping, you see the bottom picture? This is Mwingi. This is where the well that you supported, this is the area that it was put in. Very, very arid, very, very hard rock, difficult area. Road structure is next to, there's only one main road. If you have a deep well that needs to be drilled, you have to have a big rig. The big rig needs a real road. It can't go on walking paths. It can't go through riverbeds. It can't go up with rocks. And it just can't. It doesn't have the capacity. It's too heavy. It's too big. And so what happens, if there are any wells, which this area had none, you have to have it close to a road. This new rig is fabricated. We have worked with a drilling company in Texas and created a new kind of rig. It is basically an off-roading machine. It's on an Azusa truck, narrow wheelbase, incredibly maneuverable structure so that it can, go up, down roads. Because it's a narrow wheelbase, it can go on walking paths and has. The rig is trailer mounted, so there's no trailer, because that's a problem. It just, when you have no roads, you can't take a trailer on there either. You can't make the hairs, it just doesn't work. So this is the first model. Presently, right now, Dan's in Nigeria with our second prototype. With some, as we do it, we learn better ways of doing things, and so there's some amendments to it that Jose is very excited about. It means that we are, I'm making circles here. It means that we are able to, our goal this past year and in future, when Jim first started, his bottom line kind of was, let's do the easy ones first. We get as much water out there to as many people as we can. So we hug close to the ocean. We know there's water close to the water, to the ocean. Like we do the easy ones first. Well, now we're able to step a little bit more robustly, and we are now making the hard ones easy. Because the difficult to reach areas, the forgotten villages, the remote communities, they don't get the help, right? Everybody sticks close to what's safe and what they can reach, which is where the infrastructure is, which is where the bulk of the people are. But there are millions of people that live outside of those areas, and they've been forgotten. So now with these kind of equipment, we can reach into those forgotten areas. It just is incredible. When you come into that, they've never seen a white person lots of times, and they are like, why have you come? No one else has come. How can you come? How come you're here? It's these questions that we can then give. This is why we do what we do. Jesus gives us the capacity and the knowledge and the ability and support from donors such as yourselves to be able to go and give you what you need. And it's because of his grace and his abundant support, that weak provision, that we can do that. So it's an opportunity for us to shine the light of Jesus, right? We don't do it, we don't take the gospel and sell water to give the gospel. That's not who we are. But we take every opportunity to be able to shine the light of Jesus in what we do.
Amen.
And it's really cool because it's very effective. People ask us. We don't, it's more life-giving. It's real. It's, there's ownership with that approach, and it's very effective. It's a joy. So the other thing that's really important and foundationally pivotal to how we function is that the local teams are doing the work. It means that through COVID, we did not suffer, right? Our teams didn't suffer because they knew what to do. And they were able to go and do it even though we couldn't travel. And so water still flowed even though we were stuck here at home. You can see sometimes even working through the night This particular, this is again in Mwingi. This is the new rig and action. We wanted to make sure it was the first well that was drilled, and so we were trying to, it was a kind of make sure that everything was tickety-boo before we left the country with them. Dan was on the night shift. He was going from his place where he was staying, driving to about a half an hour drive to this rig where the rig was drilling. Came across, it was at 3 in the morning, came across a young girl with 2 jerry cans, 5-gallon jerry cans, walking. Stopped, said, "You want us to ride?" No, I do this every day, twice a day. She gets up at that time of the morning, she walks for her 4 kilometers to get water in the riverbed, and then she walks back. She does that twice, but she starts out at that time so she can get to school. That's how committed she was. So, that's common. Can you believe it? How'd you like to walk for 4 kilometers twice in the morning at 3 in the morning so you can get to school? You're right on top of your list, right? Yeah, not really. And the third approach, of course, is that the reason we can do all of this is because of generosity of our donors. And when you think of earning only $1 in a day, there's no hope of being able to save the money to be able to get a rig in there to drill for your village. And so that's where we come alongside. I always look at Lifewater kind of as a bit of a bridge. I can assure you I make the best use of your money. I work very hard. I actually volunteer. I don't take a wage. And we keep our overhead. It's right now at about 8%. And we work very hard to keep it low so that what money that is given goes to where the need is. And that makes it possible for the water to be able to be provided. It's just the joy of my life. This is basic costs of the kind of projects. Rehabs are where a well is, borehole's good, but the pump's totally shot, or the pad is busted and surface water can contaminate the well, so it has to be replaced. This is where we work. Not exactly the safest countries in the world. Haiti right now is a mess. No government at all. Run by gangs, kidnapping, murder. It's free for all. It's awful. And our team only lost about 2 weeks worth of work because it was unsafe. We are about 6.5 hours from Port-au-Prince, where the main upheaval is. KPCN, they're about an hour from there, which is the second largest community in Haiti. So they're carefully going back roads and are able to do the repairs and the drilling. But it's a challenge. Fuel there, it's an island. Fuel comes in by tankers from Venezuela. The ports are taken over by the gangs. And if you were thinking of praying, today I have a shipment of hand pumps coming from India arriving in port today. We have been assured by our team that the gangs they were in charge of the port. They are no longer in charge of the port, but communications are a little sketchy. So we are really believing that we're not going to have our pumps stolen because they only have 2 left in their inventory. So plus you add to the fact that fuel can't get offloaded. So right now, any fuel comes in from the DR and it's at least 15 US a gallon. It takes about 15 gallons to drill a well. So it's a challenge in Haiti right now. Certainly not one that I can go to. It's they see a white woman, they just see dollar signs. So that's not. I'm not looking forward to going there at this moment. But they're working. They don't need us there. We can do what we need to do virtually. Liberia, I just came from. Nigeria team is there presently, and Kenya, we were just there in the fall. A quick overview. You can see here, it's Mr. Jim in the background. That's their front gate. They missed their papa. It was a blow when he left. But I am very happy to say that they have adjusted and they are a vital, dynamic team. They do about 90 pump repairs a month and 4 to 6 wells a month. So even with all those problems. This is our oldest team, Lifewater Liberia Incorporated. They are operating out of Fendel, which is about an hour away from downtown Monrovia. We have done a major restructuring. About a year and a half ago, I thought we're going to have to close down this nation and start all over. We were struggling with their administration. They were not being a partner. They couldn't adjust. I think partly it couldn't adjust to Jim being gone. There was just some real structures. We had to really do tough love. It was extremely difficult for me, and I just always felt like I was letting Jim down because they were the first team he worked with, and I couldn't work with them. They were not compliant. They weren't being partner, and I wanted them to stand as a partner, not as a thing I gave all the time to. They needed to stand up and grow up. So in the tough love, they caught the vision and they have turned around, and new board and new vision, and I'm so proud of them. They have, it's like a fire's been lit in their heart, and they've caught what they can do, and they've taken ownership of what the team does. It's so encouraging. And so they're out there now, even the board members, they're out there with the team. They're seeing holes, they're seeing where they'd let the ball drop, and they're picking it up and they're making it strong again. And so this trip we just came home from, I just got home a week ago, we were able to trust again that they could lead this team, and we have put to them a need up country, and Liberia is quite a big country, and they have some northern communities that are totally outside of what's been dealt with. And so in the end, what we've done is we're probably going to start a second drill team to work up in the upper nations, which is pretty exciting. Especially since we're about to close down. So this is the second team that we have started in Liberia, pump repair team. They do the hygiene workshops, they do the pump repair, and they do assessments. So they are the ones that kind of organize and scope the whole nation and all the various places, decide what they need, what it needs a well, it needs repairs, it needs workshops, and then they come back, and then the work is distributed to the various partners. So pretty dynamic and passionate team, and I'm telling you, we're getting projects like crazy from them. Nigeria is a big team. This is a rental rig you see in the back. They are have always had to use a rental rig, which works, but to again reach those big machine has to have roads, and so we've just now shipped one of the Tom and Jerry, I forget what the name is, but another comic character that Dan's chosen for these two, and they're just fabricating the truck now and getting the rig ready. Should be ready to drill next week. Kenya has got 3 big teams. This is kind of cool. Women just struggle with so many things. One of the things, if you have your period, you miss a week of school, right? There's no place to toilet with dignity. You don't have pads. It costs a whole bunch of money. Nobody's got anything extra to do something like that. So you lose, leaves or rags or, whatever. And mostly you stay at home because you get ridiculed. And if you go off to the bush to change that, then you're vulnerable to rape and just abuse and stuff. It's not something that I would have ever thought of in our culture. It just isn't something you think about. But there, it's very real. So you see this sewing in the background. That is an initiative that we started with a microloan to make reusable sanitary napkins. And so every child, every girl, when the hygiene workshops that they provide to communities and schools, they get a package that's 6 reusable napkins with a little waterproof bag for used ones that they can rewash them and use them. Because, and just brace yourself for this, guys, the pattern is a man will come up and say, I'll buy your sanitary napkins if you're intimate with me. It's a good deal for the girls. That's what happens. Then you get on STDs, you get unwanted pregnancies. It's like, who would have thought? It blew me away. I had no idea. So this initiative, not only is it providing, something that's just what we would think is the monthly needs, but it's stopping unwanted pregnancies and it's stopping STDs. And we've done some surveys and it's like eradicated that. So what a ripple effect. Like, yeah. So this is a dynamic industry. We've now got a 20-foot container that's made into office space and sewing space, and it's occupied mostly by unwed mothers. This is the new rig that's in the dry area where your well that you supplied was. And then we have the original team, which has been defunct for a couple of years because of our leader had a serious heart attack. Everything shut down until he recovered, and he's now handed the WASH programming off to his son, who's more focused and passionate about the water issues. And so we have refabricated a rig they had, which was not in function, onto a truck, and we expect them to have wells this month from them. So that's a pretty big step. So now comes the fun part. We had a year from Liberia. When we were there, they had operated a whole year. In that year, they had provided water for over 1 million people. We didn't really realize until I had a party. That's what the top picture is, and took them all out for supper, which is a big deal for them. And we did a little fast tallying of what happened over that course of the year, and we were blown away. Like that's a 20th of the entire population in 1 year that they provided education and water for. So really an incredible initiative and worthy of celebrating. Even the goats got into it. Yeah. Those little blighters, they would get up on the roof. You got a metal roof, and they would walk the I-beam and slide down. Talk about trying to have a board meeting with that racket going on. So this is the Kenya rig. So it's the truck has been stripped, the gas tank has been moved back, and the area is ready now to receive the rig on it. But as you can see, there's not a speck of shade, and it's like 38 to 40 degrees there. So that's hence the tent, because it's blistering hot. So now this is, I'm sorry, this is a little bit of a typo there. This is the church that your donation went towards. And, here again is another story of redemption. Catherine is an orphan. She runs all the Kenya teams as far as accumulating all the demographics and the data and the documentation that we require, and puts it all together and puts it up on the website, and also runs the team that is in this Mwingi area. This is where she grew up. She was her mother and her grandmother lived in this church community, and they both died within about a week of each other, unfortunately. And the girls were abandoned. What they had set up to look after her didn't fall through, and so they were ripped away from their home and put in a government orphanage. Very hard time for her. Struggled. Thankfully, she was able to stay with her sister, but it was tough. When she was in Mwingi working, she looked up her old home, her church home, and discovered they had no water. And so she made arrangements to drill a well there. Tough for her, because there was bitterness. There could be bitterness, there could be anger, there could be, lots of stuff. But she chose, to walk like Jesus and gracefully, and provided water at her orphanage. And when you see the letter, they were in desperate need. Not only is it contaminated by a river, but it's also a factory up dumping chemicals into the water. So the new well was incredibly effective and needed. So thank you. That's you guys being the hands and the feet of Jesus and shining the light of Christ into a community, So thank you.
Well, Lynda, thank you so much for sharing with us this morning. That was so inspiring. And talk about ripple effect. Last year, around this time, many people in our community were heartbroken that we had to take the step to sell our building. And I would just like to say that is, being able to do that is what was allowed us to give a generous gift to Grassroots or to Lifewater. And now, we've affected people so far away. And that really touches my heart, and it reminds me that even though life is hard, we can still genuinely take steps every day to bless people that we will maybe never meet, but changes lives. So that's really encouraging for us, and it's really encouraging for the work you're doing as well. And just like to thank you for your time today. And I don't know, Steve, did you want to? Well, we do. Okay, yeah, we do have the QR code. Like I said, Grassroots did make a donation at Christmas time in December to Lifewater. If you feel so inclined this morning and you would like to contribute to them, that's the QR code. There's also lots of different ways you can give on their website, including crypto if you're into that, which, whatever works, right? So if you have a phone and you want to scan that, you can. But like I said, their website has tons of information. And you know that it's coming from people who really genuinely care about these projects. So, here is our pastor, Steve Bill.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Lynda. I do want to reiterate that we were at the fundraiser earlier in, I think it was February or March with Steve Bell. Yeah, and she really drove home the point that only 8% of overhead costs, which is, if you're familiar with charities and you're familiar with nonprofits and stuff, that is just a phenomenally low number for covering administrative costs and needs and stuff like that. So it is incredible, good bang for your buck, as it were, and just such a worthwhile cause. And we're so grateful that you could share. And it's just so amazing that this is local here in Thunder Bay. This is right here in our own community, which is really special. So thank you, Lynda. Thank you to your work and your ongoing ministry in Africa and Haiti. And I encourage all of us here at Grassroots to pray for Lifewater. If you're not able to give, then to at least commit to praying for them, for the ongoing success of the work, and just bringing hope to the people in these communities. And on that note of hope, we will turn our attention, as we do at the end of every service, to the bread and the cup. And as we continue to worship this morning, of course, Jesus left us these symbols to remember him by, remember the work that he did on the cross. And we often think the cross is just the crucifixion of Jesus. And of course, it is definitely that. But it is also the resurrection of Jesus. And so when we say the cross, we refer to the death and resurrection of Jesus, because without that resurrection, the death wouldn't really have meant very much as well. And so this morning, when we think about hope, and we think about, the fact that death does not get the last say, that death is not the end of the story, as we looked at Easter as well, we are reminded that resurrection was not just for Jesus, but it's for all of us, and it's for the hope and the renewal of all things, including those countries in Africa, those people who are experiencing hope in a very tangible way as their lives are being changed, health is being restored to these communities, dignity is being restored to these individuals, these women. And all of that speaks to resurrection hope, which is just this beautiful thing. And so there's just this sort of interplay between all of it as we remember the cross and remember that fateful moment 2,000 years ago when Jesus went to the cross and then 3 days later was risen from the dead. And so this morning, as we turn to the bread and the cup, we remember that Jesus' body has been broken for us, and this cup represents this blood that was spilled for us. And he instructed us to take and to eat, and every time we do this, to remember this moment, to remember him, and all of the implications of that. And so there are many, and we'll spend our entire lives reflecting on that. And so this morning, let us be intentional as we consider the cross, consider his death and his resurrection, and what that means for all of us.